Welcome to Our Voices, powered by Nassau Community College Foundation. My name is Natasha Nurse. I'm the owner and co-founder of Dressing Mermaid, co-host of Woke and Free, and the lifestyle editor of Plus Model Magazine. And this show is focused on highlighting the amazing work of powerful change agents who have a great message to share with the world. And today I'm really excited to be speaking with Martin Fogelman, the founder and CEO of Pluto.Life. So what is Pluto.Life? Who is Martin? Let me tell you all about him. He's the founder and CEO. His background is in studying externalities and information asymmetries in finance, economics, and law, which inspired him to create Pluto.Life, a transparency and analytics platform for companies to build a diverse and inclusive culture. As a hands-on CEO, Martin taught himself full stack coding. He continues to work closely with his team to build Pluto's front end and back end, prioritizing a user-first design and top-notch encryption and privacy. So without further ado, Martin, how are you?
Hi, Natasha. Thanks so much for having me.
Good. Yeah, thank you for joining Our Voices. So I think your platform's really dope. I think you're dope. So why don't you share with everyone listening how Pluto.Life came to be?
Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, I guess. It started, I think, when I was when I was a teenager. I was like a super finance nerd at the time, and so I was, my stature is quite short, so I'm walking around with a briefcase and the Wall Street Journal as a teenager, and I was sort of really interested in studying companies, right, and what it really meant to have a successful company, and what those companies look like over time. And I went on to get my economics degree from Fordham undergrad and start to work for Bloomberg here in the city. And I discovered that sort of as I learned more and more about sort of capitalism and sort of economics itself, I learned about negative externalities and the information asymmetries you mentioned, and they really started to change my perspective on what it really meant to have a successful business.
Okay, so how would you define a successful business?
Yeah, well, I think a successful business is one that is able to leverage its stakeholders to exist over time in a way that's profitable. And so profitable from a holistic perspective. So one interesting thing about economics is when there's a price of something, if you don't know information about whether it is a good or a service or a company you're going to work for or invest in, if there's something you don't know about that company, then that means there's the possibility that you're mispricing whatever it is that you're doing. So either you could be paying the wrong price or you could get the wrong salary, right? And so I think what I discovered was that was sort of where my law degrees came in. I tried to see how society was trying to internalize a lot of these problems, and for the most part, it's really through law.
Gotcha.
And so. Should I keep going on this, or sorry? I'm still nervous.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd love for you to listen. I love it. You're super smart. I feel like I learn every single time we speak to each other. So no, keep the learning going. But to just kind of fold in so then diversity and inclusion, right? Pluto.Life is essentially a platform where companies can assess, right, their diversity and inclusion stats, or bring transparency to it. So why, how did you decide to say I'm going to create this very valuable platform and have companies utilize it to better the work culture?
Yeah. So basically, one of the things that law tries to do is it tries to make rigid rules for companies to follow, right? So it's hey, well, if there's someone who's not feeling, say a company treats a person of a specific identity really poorly. If you are of that identity, right, and you are negotiating for your wage, right, that's sort of what it's like when there's a mispricing. And so, the law tries to make it where, you can't discriminate based on this. If you do discriminate, you have to give this retribution, or make the person whole. And so the problem with law is that it's very often retrospective. So it's usually focused on what happened in the past. The coolest thing about business, though, is it's forward-looking. It's about profit, right, and minimizing risk. So what I saw was an opportunity to leverage transparency around really important externalities and information asymmetries like diversity and inclusion. So, for instance, like often a company and individual stakeholders don't really know how diverse and inclusive a company really is. It's pretty easy, I guess, depending on your worldview, right? You could say and the answer is not diverse and inclusive, right? But even relatively, right? So it's the idea of even which companies should you support. If there were two companies that had an equal a product that you liked the same, which one would you go for, right? And also for investors, like which one, if that's the case, which one should you invest in? And very often investors say that the team, right, is actually the most important part of any business, right? Because what happens is over time, like your assets, all your intangible assets, right? It's really the team that you've assembled that's able to leverage and grow those assets, right? And if they don't, then the ability to change over time is a really important thing for a business, right? Like, how does GE still exist? How does Disney still exist, right? And like even take something as simple as like Netflix, right? Like Netflix pivot, right, from like this on-demand video thing, sending tangible CDs in the mail or DVDs, right? The ability to pivot like that is really a function of the team. And so a lot of studies have proven that diversity and inclusion can actually yield tangible business results because it helps companies be more innovative, right? It helps them unlock the potential of a lot of different perspectives and ways to solve problems. And so what I thought I could do was I thought I could build a tech transparency platform to basically shrink the information asymmetries and negative externalities that people don't know about, to make it more obvious which companies were doing really well and which companies aren't. So that then investor capital can be more efficient, people can find jobs that are more rewarding and be more productive, and in general, just to make more money, right? So it's sort of like the idea of conscious capitalism, I guess. Absolutely. From some respect.
I love it.
So I saw that. Oh, sorry.
No, no, absolutely. Finish your thought.
So in law school, I saw that. I of course studied corporate social responsibility and all the metrics that they currently used, and I thought that there was a really big lag when it came to diversity and inclusion, especially when it came to actually measuring things with metrics, and especially on the inclusion side. So everyone has so many conversations, right, about like how diverse the workforce is, right? But a lot of times there are only like 3 or 4 core metrics that companies are really even tracking.
Gotcha.
And it's a shame because there are so many opportunities to really understand your business from a new level and another dimension that diversity and inclusion offers, as well as helping society itself, right? Because there's sort of, it's the idea that like the most profitable company can also be the most socially responsible company.
Absolutely. You are listening to Our Voices on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Natasha Nurse, and my guest today is Martin Fogelman, the founder and CEO of Pluto.Life. So, Martin, I completely agree with you. I think as a person of color, as a woman, it warms my heart to know when I am looking at companies. I'm not currently looking for a job, but I remember when there was a time in my life when I was looking to collect that check from someone, and ultimately it's hard, right? It's hard to look at companies, and even when they're not diverse and inclusive, you can try to trick yourself and be like, well, maybe I can make the difference. But people shouldn't even really be in that compromising situation, because because just from a workflow perspective, it's more difficult to work in an environment where you feel alone, where you feel isolated, where you feel like your narrative isn't celebrated or even understood, and you kind of just, stick out like a sore thumb. So what do you think companies are really missing when it comes to like wanting to be on the forefront of saying, hey guys, we have a company and we're making X amount of money, but you know what, we're really sucking when it comes to being more diverse or being more inclusive?
Yeah, I think it's really having open, data-driven conversations that I think really moves the needle, because a lot of people have the conversation, and it's so prevalent in today's society that everyone just sort of, there's almost like a normalization of it, right? You're like, oh, yeah, like no one's diverse and inclusive, right? But like, that's not true. There are so many different levels, and some companies are way worse than others. And so one thing that companies can do is, the companies that get it right have a real sense of trust that they build with their stakeholders. And it's a trust that is not just about what we're doing well, but what we're not doing well. And it's the idea of sort of shifting the power. So like information asymmetry is like, sorry if I'm like nerding out on this, but information asymmetries are interesting because in some respects it's the firm that controls them. So like what they can do is they can use transparency, and if they use transparency in a way that's sort of a two-way street with their stakeholders, whether they're internal or external, they actually give away the power to say that they give away the power to hide how they're doing in this specific area. And transferring that power is how they can build trust.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so, like, looking for companies that do that well, that they're not just showing a report, right? They're actually like, hey, this is really who we are at our core. This is what we've done. And, we'll continue to share this information with you, is a way where stakeholders then, even if you're looking for a new position or if you're in a current position, you can feel like you're actually part of this change. And diversity and inclusion is really like a cultural issue, right? It's the sum of everyone's perspective in the company.
Absolutely.
And so it can't just be one person who is at the charge of this. It has to be everyone. And like there's no real way to get buy-in from that many people unless it's something that everyone has access to all the information. So everyone needs to see that people of specific identities are or are not feeling included, because that's when they start to see, oh, well, I am a part of the company that's making these people feel this way. And then that's when you can actually have change.
Absolutely. And do you think there are any industries that are, I guess, bigger culprits for not being as diverse as others, or it's just kind of across the board, there's just a lot of work to be done?
Yeah, across the board, there's an enormous amount of work to be done. It is interesting that some industries talk about it a lot more than others. Like the tech industry definitely talks about it more than other industries. Like we're in talks with people from like the art world, for instance, and like even like people from the horticultural world and industries are saying that like, oh wow, it's actually something that like specific industries definitely have way more problems than others, just given their historical debt almost, right? Like for that specific industry. But almost every industry has had a really bad history with inclusion, and even nascent industries. That's actually what's pretty interesting. Like we're trying to have a partnership with some companies, with some blockchain companies, to sort of help companies measure this from the beginning. And it's interesting to see like even nascent industries sometimes even have these problems.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah,
gotcha.
There are some are talking about it more than others, but it's definitely a pervasive problem.
Okay. You are listening to Our Voices. My name is Natasha Nurse. More with my guest, Martin Fogelman, the founder and CEO of Pluto.Life, next on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC.
90.3 WHPC reminds you that understanding your finances is a key to a strong financial future. And good financial decisions don't have to be big or overwhelming. Little things like putting money into a savings